My name is Elise Parker, and the first thing my parents said to me on my 30th birthday was not happy birthday. My mother called at 9:14 in the morning and asked whether I could pick up extra votive candles for my sister Claire's celebration the following Saturday. She was worried the hall might look too plain in the photos. I stood in my apartment kitchen with a cup of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other. On the counter, there was a grocery store cupcake I had bought for myself the night before because I had learned not to expect my family to remember dates unless they were on a shared calendar with reminders. Sure, I said automatically. My mother kept talking. The ballroom had been rented. The florist was delivering arrangements. Claire wanted a champagne-colored backdrop. My father had booked a host because he wanted the evening to feel special. At no point did either of my parents mention that I had turned 30 that morning. I did not correct her. That is important to understand. I had spent most of my life correcting the empty spaces my family left around me. I reminded them about my graduation. I sent my own address before Christmas. I asked whether there was room for me at dinners. I translated forgetting into busyness because it hurt less than calling it what it was. By noon, I had received birthday messages from coworkers, a neighbor, and a former college roommate. By evening, I had received a group text from my mother with a picture of sample napkins for Claire's party. I answered with a thumbs-up emoji. Then I put the cupcake in the refrigerator and told myself I would not make the day into evidence. I was wrong about that, because 3 days later, I walked into a rented hall filled with flowers, candles, personalized place cards, and a welcome sign that said, "Celebrating Claire, the brightest chapter yet," and I understood that someone had remembered how to make a birthday feel important. They had simply decided it would not be mine. On the night of my birthday, I had believed silence was the safest response. I did not want anyone to say I was needy. But over time I learned that silence does not protect you from a pattern. It only makes the pattern easier for other people to repeat. I had trained myself to treat a forgotten date as a small disappointment because that was easier than admitting it was part of a larger hierarchy. In my family, birthdays were never only about cake. They were about who people paused for, who they asked questions about, and whose future was treated as worthy of a speech. I had always been told that I was independent, which sounded flattering until I saw that it often meant nobody felt responsible for showing up. The more I looked back, the more I understood that my independence had been used as an excuse for neglect. I was the daughter who could handle anything, so they gave me nothing and called it trust. Later, I thought about the cupcake in my refrigerator. It was a tiny symbol of how low I had set the expectation for myself. I did not want a crowd. I did not want a rented room. I only wanted to feel that the day belonged to me too. Realizing that made the silence of my parents feel less like a mistake and more like a message I had been trying not to read. The hall was at the end of a renovated brick building near the river. I had passed it many times and always thought it looked too elegant for our family. It had tall, als aimable foyer and a stage at the one room. My parents had rented the entire place for Claire's 32nd birthday. They called it a milestone celebration, even though no one had used the word milestone for me 30th birthday 3 days earlier. Claire looked beautiful when she entered. She wore a soft green dress and smiled in the way people smile when they feel entirely expected. My father hugged her first. My mother held both of her hands and said, "We wanted you to know how proud we are." Everyone clapped. I clapped too. That was the strange part. I was not jealous of my sister for being celebrated. I wanted her to be celebrated. I wanted every person I loved to know they mattered. What hurt was watching my parents demonstrate such care with a precision they had not even attempted for me. At the entrance, a young venue host named Daniel checked names from a tablet. He smiled when I approached. "Elise Parker," he asked. "Yes." He looked down, scrolled, and hesitated. "I have you listed as additional family guest," he said. "No meal preference, and no assigned seat. I can find you a place near the back table. Additional family guest, not daughter, not sister, not even +1. Just an extra line added after the count had been finished." I told him that was fine because I did not yet know how to say anything else. The back table was close enough to the family to be photographed, if needed, but far enough away that no one would accidentally include me in the center of the evening. Claire came over before the program began. "You made it," she said, as if I had surprised her. Of course I did. She hugged me quickly. "Mom said you were busy this week. I thought you might skip." I almost said it was my birthday, but the words stayed in my throat, because I could already hear the answer I would receive. "Why didn't you say something? Why are you making this about you? Claire's night is not the time." So I sat at the back table and watched my parents move through the room like people who had never forgotten a single important thing. As I watched the decorations go up, I kept thinking about effort. Forgetting can happen. Effort cannot be accidental. A hall, flowers, music, cards, and a guest list are all proof of intention. Seeing that, intention made it impossible to keep calling the difference an oversight. Every detail in the hall had been chosen with care. The flowers matched Claire's dress. The dessert tags used her favorite phrase. The slideshow included pictures from elementary school through the present. I did not resent the care itself. I resented the lie I had told myself for years, that my parents were simply not sentimental people. They were sentimental. They were organized. They were generous with attention. They just did not extend that attention to me with the same consistency. That realization was painful because it removed the last, neutral explanation. The difference was no longer mystery, it was preference. I noticed that everyone at the hall had a story about Claire. They spoke about her goals, her personality, the way she made them laugh. No one asked me about my new job, the apartment I had just signed for, or what turning 30 meant to me. The absence of curiosity can be another form of exclusion. It tells you that people have already decided your role before you arrive. The guest list was displayed on a framed board beside the welcome table. It had been printed on thick cream paper and arranged alphabetically, with small gold leaves around the edges. I found on Claire Parker Honoré. Then the names of her friends, co-workers, neighbors, and college roommates. Then my parents. Then my uncle and aunt. Then, in a smaller font below a thin line, Elise Parker, family guest. I stared at it longer than I should have. A woman from Claire's office stood beside me and said, "Are you one of the cousins?" "I'm her sister," I said. "Oh," she looked surprised. I didn't realize Claire had a sister. It was not her fault. She was simply repeating what the room had taught her. At the welcome table sat a stack of folded cards for the host. Each card had a gold border and the venue logo at the top. I assumed they were the notes Daniel would use to introduce speakers, announce the slideshow, and guide the evening. One card had slipped halfway out of its envelope. I could see my mother's handwriting on the front. To Daniel, "Please read before welcome." I did not touch it. I had spent enough years being accused of snooping whenever I noticed something people had left in plain sight. But I noticed it. I noticed the envelope. I noticed my mother glance toward it twice, as if she had something she did not want forgotten. My father came over and asked whether I had found a seat. Yes, I said. He looked around the hall without really looking at me. Good. Claire is nervous about the slideshow. Could you make sure the gift table stays organized? You're so good at keeping things practical. That was the role I had been assigned for years. Practical. Not celebratory. Not central. Useful. I walked to the gift table and straightened the cards people had brought for Claire. I watched my mother float past in her navy dress, accepting compliments for the decorations. I watched my father shake hands with people he barely knew. I watched everyone prepare to celebrate the daughter they had planned for. And I wondered what exactly was inside the card with my mother's handwriting on it. The board made me remember every time I had been asked to arrive early, stay late, bring supplies, or solve a problem. I had always been included in the work of family. I was only missing from its celebration. The back table was full of people who had also been added late, a neighbor, two co-workers, and a cousin's boyfriend. But they were strangers to the family story, while I was supposed to be part of it. Sitting there showed me that exclusion does not need a locked door. Sometimes it looks like a name printed in a smaller font, a chair placed behind a pillar, a task handed to the person who is not meant to be celebrated. I could have spent the whole night organizing gifts and pretending it was fine. Instead, I began noticing the exact mechanisms by which people are moved to the edge. The woman who asked whether I was a cousin apologized later, but I told her she did not need to. She had not created the impression. She had only followed it. That was another lesson from the evening. Families teach outsiders how to see us. If they introduce you as an extra, people will believe you are one. I decided I would start introducing myself differently, even when they did not. A few minutes before the program began, Daniel came to the back table holding the gold-bordered card. "Excuse me," he said softly. "Are you Elise Parker?" I looked up. Yes. He had a careful expression, the kind people wear when they have read something that does not fit the room they are standing in. "Your mother asked me to confirm a pronunciation in this note," he said. "I just want to make sure I have it right before the welcome." He turned the card toward me. There, beneath the venue's printed heading, my mother had written several instructions in blue ink. "Welcome, Claire, as the only birthday being celebrated tonight. Do not mention Elise's birthday from this week. She can be sensitive, and we do not want to confuse the focus. Leave anyone is milestone." I felt the room become very quiet, even though the music was still playing. The words were not an accident. They were not a forgotten phone call or a missed calendar alert. They were a plan. My mother had remembered my birthday well enough to instruct a stranger not to mention it. Daniel looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I did not mean to put you in an uncomfortable position." "You didn't," I said, though my voice sounded far away. "You answered a question I did not know I was allowed to ask." He asked if he should change the card. I could have told him to throw it away. I could have protected my parents from the sentence they had written. That would have been my old instinct. Cover the evidence, absorb the hurt, keep the evening smooth. Instead, I handed the card back. "Please read it exactly as you were instructed," I said. Daniel's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Yes, I was sure for one reason only. I was tired of being expected to carry the discomfort of my family's choices while they carried the comfort of their image. The card did not create the hurt. It named the choice behind it. That was why I could finally stop arguing with myself about whether I had taken the situation too personally. The moment I read the card, I felt two competing instincts. One was to protect my mother from embarrassment, because I had done that all my life. The other was to protect the woman I was becoming, the woman who was tired of being edited out. I knew the decision would look dramatic to people who had never had to carry the quiet work of making an exclusion invisible. But I also knew that asking the host to throw away the card would make me responsible for the secrecy again. I chose not to become the keeper of their image. The host's discomfort reminded me that dignity can sometimes be recognized by strangers before it is recognized by relatives. He had no history with us, no stake in our old stories, and no reason to minimize the card. He simply saw a written instruction that was unkind. His reaction helped me trust my own. I had not invented the cruelty because I was sensitive. The cruelty was visible. When Daniel stepped onto the stage, the room grew still. My father moved closer to Claire. My mother lifted her phone to record. The lights softened over the tables. Daniel smiled politely and welcomed everyone to the Riverside Hall. He thanked the Parker family for choosing the venue. Then he looked down at the card in his hand. This evening, he began, "We are here to celebrate Claire Parker and the next chapter of her life." Everyone clapped, then he paused. I was also asked to clarify that this evening is only for Claire's milestone, and that Elise Parker's birthday from this week should not be mentioned so the focus is not confused. For a second, nobody reacted. Then I heard my mother whisper, "Oh no." Daniel kept reading because he had been told to read the card. The note says, "Elise can be sensitive, so please do not announce it." The room did not explode. That was not how silence worked in my family. It folded inward. My father looked at my mother. Claire lowered her eyes. My aunt reached for her water glass. A woman from Claire's office looked directly at me, then looked away. Daniel stopped reading and seemed to realize the note was not a normal event instruction. "I'm sorry," he said into the microphone. "I believe I may have read more than intended." "No," I said from the back table. My voice was calm enough that people turned toward me. "You read exactly what was written." My mother walked toward my table quickly. "Elise, please. This is Clyde Knight, Daniel's hand. You made my birthday part of Claire's night when you wrote instructions about it," I said. My father said my name like a warning, but I did not raise my voice. I did not tell everyone about every missed date from my childhood. I did not accuse my sister of anything she had not done. I said one sentence. I would have preferred to be forgotten than managed. Then I stood up, picked up my coat, and walked out of the rented hall while the room remained as quiet as the card had made it. I did not want the room to turn against my parents. I only wanted the truth to stop being carried alone by me. There is a difference between exposing someone and refusing to hide what they wrote. Walking out did not feel triumphant. It felt clean. There is a difference. Triumph wants witnesses. Cleanliness is what happens when you stop carrying something that was never yours. I did not need the room to applaud me or condemn my parents. I needed to stop sitting in a place where the written plan required my silence. Once I reached the door, I realized how much effort I had spent over the years, trying to look unaffected. The effort itself had become another way I disappeared. Leaving was the first time I allowed my actions to say what I would no longer explain. Outside the hall, the cold air steadied me. I was aware that some people inside would call my exit a scene. But I had not made the scene. I had stopped participating in it. There is a difference between causing disruption and refusing to be used as the quiet surface that hides it. That difference became one of the most important truths I carried home. The parking lot was cold, and I sat in my car without turning on the engine. A minute later, Daniel came outside. He carried the original card in a clear venue sleeve and a printed copy of the event file. "I thought you might want this," he said. "The hall keeps a record of all client instructions. I can email you a copy if you want it for your own records." I took the sleeve. The card was small, but it felt heavier than anything I had carried into the hall. "Thank you," I said. "You do not owe me thanks," he answered. "I'm sorry that happened." His kindness almost made me cry because it had no hidden demand. He was not asking me to forgive quickly. He was not asking me to return inside for someone else's comfort. He was simply acknowledging that the thing written on the card was wrong. When I got home, I opened the email Daniel sent. It included the event reservation confirmation, the finalized guest list, and the scanned instruction card. The guest list had been submitted 2 weeks earlier. My birthday had been 3 days before the event. That meant my parents had known. They had planned the party, written the instructions, and decided that mentioning my birthday would distract from Claire. I made a folder on my computer called Hall. Inside it, I saved the card, the email, the guest list, and a screenshot of the family group chat from the day of my birthday. In the chat, my mother had posted a picture of Claire's flower samples at 8:06 p.m. No one had written my name. I did not save the files because I wanted revenge. I saved them because I knew what would happen next. Someone would tell me it was a misunderstanding. Someone would say the host made a mistake. Someone would say my mother did not mean it that way. The files would remind me that meaning is not only what people claim after they are caught. Meaning is also what they choose to put in writing. The folder on my computer became a quiet boundary. It reminded me that I did not need to chase agreement from anyone. I only needed to make decisions based on what was real. The venue file gave me a chronology. Dates are useful because they do not change their story when emotions rise. The reservation had been made before my birthday. The guest list had been finalized after my parents knew the date. The card had been written in advance. I was no longer dealing with one awkward sentence. I was looking at a sequence of choices. That did not make the hurt easier, but it made my next decision simpler. I did not need to prove that I deserved a celebration. I needed to decide whether I would keep offering my labor to people who had deliberately planned around my absence. Saving the documents was also a promise to my future self. I knew there would be days when loneliness made me question whether I had been too hard on those and words, not to reopen the wound, but to remember why the boundary existed. Proof can be an act of self-respect when it protects you from your own habit of minimizing pain. Claire called the next morning. I let the phone ring until the 3rd time. When I answered, she did not begin with an apology. "You embarrassed me," she said. I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the cupcake, still waiting in the refrigerator. "I did not write the card," I said. "But you told him to read it." He asked if he should follow your mother's instructions. I told him to read what she wrote. Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said you could have handled it privately. "So could Mom. That isn't fair." "No," I said. "It isn't." I heard her take a breath. "She worked so hard on that party." Claire said, "Dad spent a lot of money. Everyone was there for me, and I was there for you too." I said. "I came 3 days after my own birthday was ignored." I sat at the back. "I organized gifts." I applauded. "I did not ask anyone to stop celebrating you." Claire's voice softened slightly. "I didn't know they forgot." "They didn't forget," I said. "That is what the card proves." There was a long pause. I did not hate my sister. I need to say that. Claire had accepted a celebration because it was offered. She had grown used to being centered because our parents had taught her that was normal. The deeper problem was that I had been taught to keep accepting the edge of the room. "I'm sorry," she said finally. I should have said something when the host read it. "Yes," I said. "You should have," she cried then, quietly. I did not rush to comfort her. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I was learning that another person's guilt did not require me to abandon my own clarity. "My birthday wasn't ruined because you had a party," I told her. "It was ruined because Mom and Dad decided I could not exist near it." When we ended the call, I felt sad. But sadness was different from confusion. For the first time, I knew exactly what had happened. Claire's sadness mattered, but it could not become another reason for me to disappear. I could care about her feelings, while still refusing the role that had hurt me. After the call with Claire, I thought about how favoritism affects more than one child. Claire had been taught that receiving the center of the room was normal. I had been taught that taking up space was dangerous. Neither lesson was healthy. I did not want to punish her for being loved loudly. I wanted to stop participating in a system where her happiness depended on my disappearance. We could both be celebrated. We could both be remembered. The fact that my parents had made it feel impossible was not a reason to continue accepting it. It was a reason to build something different. I could hear the grief in Claire's voice because her perfect night had been interrupted by a truth she did not want to face. But I also knew that her grief could not become another emergency I was expected to solve. I could not soothe her back into comfort by returning to invisibility. The only fair relationship we could build would begin with both of us seeing what had happened clearly. That Sunday, I drove to the lake outside town. I had no plan. I only needed to be somewhere. My family could not call me from another room and ask me to make something easier. I parked near a trail and walked until my phone lost signal. For years, I had believed that being low maintenance was a virtue. I believed my family loved me because I was the daughter who did not need much. I did not need a large party. I did not need an expensive gift. I did not need a public speech. I only needed to be remembered. The card showed me that even that had been too much for them. It was easier for my parents to frame my absence as sensitivity than to admit that they had built a celebration around pretending I was not part of the same story. Near the water, I sat on a bench and thought about the word focus. My mother had written that she did not want the focus confused. But attention is not a limited resource in a family. Love is not a spotlight that can shine on only one child at a time. You can celebrate one person without erasing another. I understood then that I had been competing in a contest. I did not want to win. I did not want to be the favorite. I wanted to stop being treated as the person whose needs could be removed from the room without anyone noticing. When I got back to my car, I opened a notes app and wrote a sentence. I will not attend events where I am invited to make someone else's image complete. Then I wrote another. I will not turn my own milestones into secrets to keep other people comfortable. Those sentences became the beginning of a rule, not a punishment. A rule for how I would participate in my own life. The drive gave me time to recognize that I was not trying to become more demanding. I was trying to become more honest about what I had needed all along. At the lake, I let myself grieve without converting the grief into a task. I did not write a list of how to fix the family. I did not search for the right sentence to make my parents finally understand. I simply admitted that I was hurt, That admission was harder than anger because it removed the illusion that I could solve the problem by being clearer, kinder, or more useful. Sometimes the truth is that people understand perfectly well and still choose convenience. When I accepted that possibility, I stopped trying to earn a response they had already decided not to give. Walking alone by the water, I remembered every time someone told me I was lucky to be low drama. I had accepted it as praise. But low drama had often meant low expectation. Do not ask, do not need, do not complicate. I no longer wanted to be admired for having no needs. I wanted to be loved with the full awareness that I was a person, not a convenient absence. My parents called together that evening. My father spoke first. Your mother made an unfortunate note. The host should have known better than to read it. I looked at the reservation file open on my laptop. The host read the instructions you gave him, I said. My mother's voice came through the speaker. I only wrote that because I knew you would be upset if nobody said happy birthday. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. So you knew, I said. She went quiet. You knew it was my birthday. You knew nobody had said anything. And your solution was to make sure no one mentioned it at Claire's party. That's not what I meant. It is what you wrote. My father interrupted. We are not going to be accused of being bad parents because of one careless card. I am not asking you to call yourselves bad parents, I said. I am asking you to look at the pattern. What pattern? My mother asked. The pattern where my milestones are treated as optional, but my usefulness is expected. The pattern where I am invited when you need someone to help. Then placed in the background, when the photo begins, my father said you are rewriting history. No, I said. I have the card, the guest list, the reservation email, and the messages from my birthday. I am finally reading history correctly. That sentence ended the conversation. My mother asked what I wanted. I said, for now, space. She started to protest. I continued, I am not attending Sunday dinner next week. I am not organizing holidays. I am not helping with family events. I need you to understand that access to me is not automatic when my presence is treated like an inconvenience. My father called it dramatic. I said, it is specific. Then I hung up. The reservation file was simple. It had dates, names, instructions, and signatures. Yet it held more clarity than years of conversations in which everyone tried to rename what had happened. The conversation with my parents showed me how quickly people move from accountability to defense when a record exists. My father wanted the host to be the problem because that was easier than the card. My mother wanted intention to matter more than impact because that protected her self-image. But the written words had their own weight. They did not need me to shout. They sat in the file and said exactly what had been decided. I could finally understand quiet justice not as revenge, but as refusing to argue with evidence. I let the documents do the work I had been doing alone. My father's refusal to see the pattern was painful, but it also simplified the work ahead. I could stop waiting for him to validate the conclusion. Adults do not need unanimous approval to set healthy limits. I had enough information. I had the card. I had the history. I had my own response. That was enough to begin building a different way of participating. For the next few days, I wrote several messages I never sent. One listed every birthday they had forgotten. Another explained how often I had paid for supplies, set up chairs-driven relatives to appointments, and smiled through conversations where people praised Claire for things I had quietly helped make possible. I deleted all of them, not because they were untrue, because I did not need a 10-page argument to justify a boundary. I needed one clear decision, so I wrote a shorter message instead. Going forward, I will only attend family events when I am invited as a full participant, not as an extra helper or background guest. I will not organize, pay for, or manage events that treat my presence as optional. I need time away from family plans while I decide what respectful contact looks like. I sent it to my parents and Claire. Then I put my phone on airplane mode. That evening, I bought a small cake from a bakery near my apartment. I ordered the kind one always chose for other people, lemon with raspberry filling. I picked up a single gold candle shaped like a 3 and another shaped like a 0. At home, I set the cake on my kitchen table and lit the candles. It felt strange. I was 30 years old, sitting alone in a quiet apartment, singing happy birthday to myself under my breath. But it also felt honest. There was no rented hall, no florist, no host, no carefully managed image. There was only a cake, a candle, and a woman finally refusing to wait for someone else to decide that her life was worth celebrating. Before he blew out the candles, I made a wish. I wished that I would stop, confusing attention with care. Then I blew out the flame. The small cake was not a replacement for a family celebration. It was a decision not to abandon myself while waiting for one. That distinction changed the way I saw every milestone after it. The message I sent was shorter than the messages I deleted because boundaries do not need every example to be valid. The older version of me believed I had to build an airtight case before I was allowed to say no. I thought that if I could just explain enough, nobody could accuse me of being unfair. But people who benefit from a pattern will often call any limit unfair. I learned that a boundary is not a jury brief. It is a decision. It tells people what access to you requires now, not what they must believe about the past. As the candle burned down, I realized that celebration is not only something received. It is also something practiced. I could learn to mark my own life without turning it into a lonely substitute for family. The people who joined me later would not be there because I had earned a place in their plan. They would be there because they wanted to share the moment. That was the kind of attention I wanted to recognize from then on. 2 weeks passed before my mother sent a longer message. She wrote that the family was worried. She wrote that Claire felt terrible. She wrote that my father was embarrassed. She wrote that everyone wanted to move on. There was no mention of my birthday until the final paragraph. I know we should have acknowledged it, she wrote. But you have to understand we had a lot going on. A lot going on. That was the sentence my family used whenever someone else's priorities were supposed to erase mine. I read the message twice. Then I replied, I understand you had a lot going on. I do not understand why that included written instructions, asking someone not to mention my birthday. My mother called immediately. I apologized, she said. You explained, I answered. Those are different things. What would a real apology look like to you? The question surprised me because it sounded almost sincere. It would name what happened, I said. It would say you remembered my birthday, chose not to acknowledge it, and asked the host not to mention it. It would not say the host embarrassed you. It would say the card did. She was quiet. Then she saw I did not want Claire's party to become about you. I never asked it to, I said. I wanted my own birthday to exist at all. For the first time, my mother had no answer ready. I told her I was still not ready for a family dinner. I told her I would contact her when I was. She said she loved me. I believed she did, in the way she knew how. But love, without accountability, had left me standing at too many back tables. I was no longer willing to call that enough. Moving on did not mean returning to the same arrangement. It meant taking the lesson with me and refusing to make myself smaller so other people could feel comfortable. When my mother asked me to move on, I understood that she wanted relief before repair. She wanted the emotion to end so the family could return to familiar routines. But moving on without a change would have meant moving backward. I was willing to forgive slowly. I was not willing to resume the same role quickly. That distinction became the heart of every conversation after that. I could be compassionate without being available. I could accept an apology without reopening every door. I could love my parents without volunteering again for the background. My mother's message taught me that remorse has stages. First comes embarrassment, then comes explanation. Only later, sometimes, comes accountability. I could not rush her through those stages, and I would not confuse the first with the third. The distance I kept was not a punishment for her growth. It was protection while I waited to see whether growth became behavior. A month after the haul, I invited 6 people to a restaurant downtown. They were not all family. There was my college roommate Nia, my neighbor Mrs. Flores, 2 coworkers, my cousin Mia, and Claire. I hesitated before inviting my sister, but she had called twice since the party, not to defend herself, but to ask questions. She wanted to know what I needed. She wanted to understand the difference between feeling guilty and doing something different, so I invited her. The restaurant gave us a table by the window. There were no place cards, no assigned roles, no host with instructions. I chose the menu. I chose the cake. I chose the time. When everyone arrived, Nia handed me a card. It was simple, white, and slightly crooked because she had written my name with a marker that bled through the paper. Inside, she wrote, "You make room for people. I hope this year makes room for you." I cried when I read it, not because it was extravagant, because it was direct. Claire sat beside me. Halfway through dinner, she said, "I brought you something." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a copy of the photo from the hall. On the back, she had written, "I am sorry I let you become invisible in a room I was supposed to share with you." I looked at her. "I don't need you to hate Mom and Dad," I said. "I don't," she answered. "But I am done pretending I didn't see it." That was enough for that night. We took a picture at the end of dinner. No one arranged us by importance. No one asked who should stand in the middle. We just leaned together and smiled. When I looked at the photo later, I did not see a perfect family. I saw people who had made room. The dinner I planned was not extravagant, but it was reciprocal. People came because they wanted to be with me, not because I had organized the room for them. The birthday dinner I planned for myself felt almost radical because it was so ordinary. I did not have to wait for a committee to decide whether I mattered. I chose people who had already shown up in small ways. That night taught me that chosen family is not always a dramatic replacement for blood relatives. Sometimes it is simply the group of people who respond when your name is mentioned, who remember your date, who give you a card without needing to be reminded by a calendar. That kind of care is quiet, but it changes everything. At my own dinner, I watched people listen when I spoke. That should not have felt unusual, but it did. I realized how much energy I had spent monitoring rooms where I was never sure whether I was welcome. A table where you do not have to monitor yourself is a powerful thing. It gives you back attention you did not know you had lost. In December, my parents planned another event, a holiday brunch at the same hall by the river. The invitation arrived by email. It had a gold border, the venue logo, and a cheerful line about celebrating together. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the desire to attend so nobody could say I was difficult, the desire to show that I was over it, the desire to prove that I could still be the easy daughter. Then I read the attachment. There was a schedule, a list of family photos, a note asking me to arrive early to help check gift labels and coordinate the children. No seat assignment. No mention of my role as a guest. I smiled, but not because it was funny. The pattern had returned in a new outfit. I replied with one sentence. Thank you for the invitation. I will not be attending or coordinating the event. My mother wrote back, Can we talk about this? I said, The invitation already answered the question. Later that day, Claire texted me. I saw the schedule. I told Mom you should not have been asked to work it. I appreciated the message, but I did not change my answer. A boundary is not a test people pass once. It is information about how you protect yourself when the pattern returns. I spent the day of the brunch at Nia's apartment, helping her decorate a tiny tree with paper stars. We ordered takeout and watched a movie neither of us had seen before. At one point, Nia asked whether I felt guilty. I thought about the event hall, the card, the back table, the cake I had lit alone. No, I said. I feel finished performing. Returning the invitation taught me that boundaries are often quiet. Sometimes the strongest sentence is simply, I will not be attending. The holiday invitation was a useful test because it came with polished language. It said togetherness, celebration, and gratitude. But the attached schedule told the truer story. I was expected to arrive early, manage tasks, and remain undefined as a guest. The papers showed me that words like family can be used to ask for labor while avoiding mutuality. Saying no was not about revenge for the whole. It was about refusing to step back into the same blueprint. Once I saw the pattern on paper, I could not pretend it was only in my head. When I declined the holiday brunch, I did not feel the rush of victory I expected. I felt relief. Relief is quieter than victory, but it lasts longer. It meant I was no longer negotiating with every invitation. I had a standard. The standard made my choices less emotional, not more. It allowed me to protect my time before resentment had a chance to build. I still speak to my parents sometimes. Our relationship is different now. It is smaller in certain ways, but it is more honest. My mother has apologized again, this time without explanations. She said she remembered my birthday. She said she chose not to acknowledge it. She said she wrote the card because she did not want Claire's evening interrupted. And she understands now that she treated me as an interruption before I ever spoke. I listened. I told her I appreciated the truth. I did not promise that everything would return to normal, because normal was the problem. Normal was me accepting forgotten birthdays, extra chairs, helper roles, and invitations that expected labor, but did not offer belonging. Claire and I are still learning how to be sisters without the old arrangement. Sometimes she notices things before I do. Sometimes I have to remind her that she does not need to fix every feeling I have. We are both trying to become adults outside the roles our parents gave us. I still have the card from Riverside Hall. It is in a folder on my computer beside the reservation email and the guest list. I do not look at it often, but I keep it because it changed something in me. It showed me that the truth does not always arrive as a confession. Sometimes it arrives in handwriting on a small gold-bordered card. Sometimes it is read aloud by a stranger who has no idea what it will reveal. My parents forgot my 30th birthday. Then they rented a hall for my sister. Then they wrote instructions, asking a host not to mention me. For years, I would have tried to make that story smaller. I would have said they were busy. I would have said my sister deserved her night. I would have said I did not need much. Now I say something different. I deserve to be remembered. I deserve to be invited as myself. I deserve not to be managed out of the room. And if a family only has space for me when I am quiet, useful, and invisible, then I no longer need a place in their picture. I can build a life where I am not a background role. I can celebrate my own milestones without waiting for permission. I can let the people who truly care about, not behind it. The card stays in my folder not as a weapon but as a reminder that dignity begins when you stop translating written evidence into excuses for the people who hurt you. I do not know whether my parents will ever fully understand the cost of the card. They may remember it as an embarrassing night at a venue. I remember it as the moment I stopped accepting a role written by someone else. I do not need their memory to match mine for the lesson to remain true. I know what I saw. I know what was written. And I know that the life I am building now has room for my name, my milestones, and my voice, without asking anyone's permission first. The older I get, the more I understand that family titles do not automatically define intimacy. Intimacy is built through attention, repair, and mutual respect. My parents are still my parents. Claire is still my sister. But I am no longer willing to make those titles the reason I accept a smaller role in my own life. I can be connected without being erased.